Hi guys, so if you remember about a year ago, Brennan and I watched every single Marvel movie in anticipation of Avengers Infinity War. It was about 20 movies. It was
a lot.
Kind of an undertaking. So what we're gonna do is, because we're gonna get to go to Galaxy's Edge here in about a little over a week or so. So yeah, we have my Darth Maul, kinda, it's actually like two, I think, Darth Vader lightsabers kind of fused together. But we're gonna watch every single Star Wars movie in chronological order, not in terms of like release or the best order to watch it, because I know that's kind of a big conversation that a lot of people have and debate on, is the correct order in which to watch Star Wars movies. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna watch it from episode 1 all the way up until episode 8. That's gonna be episode 1, 2, 3, the prequels. We're gonna watch Solo, Rogue One, then the original trilogy 4, 5, and 6, and then the newest trilogy 7 and 8. And so we just watched episode 1 right back there. You can see Darth Maul on the TV, and that's why we have this lightsaber here. So, what did you think of Star Wars Episode 1, the most popular Star Wars movie of all time?
Is it really just the most popular?
No, it's the least popular.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's why I was questioning it. I don't know, it was just a giant flex, like, of editing abilities.
Yeah, we were talking about that, because just comparatively to the original trilogy, they had a lot of, like, hurdles that they had to kind of get over in terms of what they were capable of doing back in the 70s. And I think this was just George Lucas being like, look what I can do now, look at all these settings, look at all these creatures and effects, and it was fun. There was a lot of politics in it, and then there was some characters like Jar Jar Binks who were a little bit more catered to the younger kids, I think. And so it was different, and it's setting up the story. So we know this kid, Anakin Skywalker, we know that he has special capabilities. We have met these other characters in this universe, and it's hard to watch this and not kind of compare it to the original trilogy. It's hard to like watch this on its own in a sense, but it was still fun. You know, it wasn't the best movie ever, because the prequels were kind of made just to kind of set up the story that the original trilogy was. So I don't know, it was still fun though, and it's just kind of, it's setting up the story, and I'm excited to see the rest. I'm excited for this undertaking that we're gonna have to watch all the Star Wars movies in anticipation of going to see Galaxy's Edge, which is the penultimate goal, to go and experience that land for what it is, and all the references that we can hopefully see in these 10 movies, I guess, that we're gonna watch. But I guess we'll see you for Attack of the Clones. This was The Phantom Menace, episode 1, and so we'll see you for the next one.
Okay.
Okay, so we just watched, oh, there we go. We just watched episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
What did you think? Or do you want me to go first this time?
You can go first
okay.
this time.
So this is Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber. It was interesting. I'm kind of glad that we're kind of getting through the prequels. Not that the prequels are bad. I personally don't think that. But it's going to be exciting to get to the main Star Wars stories. And then, for the reason that we're watching these movies, is to become familiar with the Galaxy's Edge time period, I guess, which is mostly about episodes 7 and 8. So we are kind of starting way far off the mark in terms of what's going to be relevant for us when we go to Galaxy's Edge. But the story is still cool, and it's interesting to see Anakin kind of growing up, and you know where they're all going to end up, and I think that's the most interesting part to me, is that you know where it ends up, and you know where A New Hope starts in that story. So just to kind of see where it starts and then fill in those gaps, which is what they did with these prequel movies, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think we're like, the time that these movies were made was when cinematic direction probably wasn't at its peak. So some of it is like acting and editing.
Cinematic direction?
Yeah, like I feel like it was kind of cringy.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that we're watching it in this order this time, whereas we started with the original trilogy first, and I feel like the storyline is starting to make a little bit more sense when I'm watching it this way, for me personally.
Really? I mean, that's like the ideal goal, and that's why like I thought it'd be kind of cool to watch it like this, and like it's gonna be interesting after Revenge of the Sith to watch Solo, which is the most recent Star Wars movie, I think, right? And just to kind of like see that just kind of quality and how that kind of transposes across time and whatnot. And so it's gonna be interesting. But as far as this one, we're talking about this one right now. It was neat, and I appreciate the lightsaber. battles in the prequels and all that. This one was, whereas the first one was more about politics, this one was more about romance, I think, and kind of setting that story up a little bit. There was still a lot of politics in this too, but all in all, it was fun. But now I guess we're on to episode 3, which is Revenge of the Sith, which is actually, I think, my favorite, to be honest.
Oh. Ooh.
Yeah, okay, so let's watch that one. And we did it! We just watched episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, where Anakin Skywalker turns into...
Darth Vader!
Darth Vader! So, I think that is one of my favorite Star Wars movies.
Oh,
to be totally honest, I think the politics and the romance take a bit of a back seat, and it's all about action and story. So this is where it like really picked up for the prequels, comparatively to the other 2 movies, and the lightsaber battles in this movie are the best in any Star Wars movie by far. The action just kind of like goes. There's still some politics and some romance, which isn't a bad thing. It all contributes to the story itself, but it's just as far as just what made this a fun movie to watch, it's all about that lightsaber action. Did you have fun?
Yeah, I like this one the most out of the 3 so far, just because it was the one where the plot was moving forward the most. So it kind of just was the one to tie the story in the most.
Yeah, like just especially like the montage at the end where you just got to see where all the characters ended up and how they got there and how it just set it up for the original trilogy. But it was cool and it was fun, and now we are done with the prequels, so yay for us. Now we're getting into the real meat of the Star Wars story, more or less. And so our next one is going to be Solo, a Star Wars story. Woohoo! Okay. And just like that, we watched Solo, a Star Wars story. What did you think of Solo?
I think Solo was just like a fun movie because it like brought you back to the origin stories, which like everyone likes a good origin story. So this one was just, it was fun. It was one of the newer movies, and I don't know, I liked it.
It is the newest, the most recent Star Wars film, and for it to be set this far back is interesting chronologically. And it sets up that character that we all know and love, Han Solo, and just seeing that kind of like timeline-wise, because they talk a lot about the Empire and then the previous Republic, and just kind of getting that story and having that set up and see where it started and where it's gradually going is actually really interesting. I'm learning more about Star Wars and I'm getting more into it because I'm watching these in that order.
And I have to talk like this.
I do have to talk like this. But it's a fun heist movie, and it's another one of those that just kind of like the story and the action just kind of keep it moving at a really fast, fun pace and whatnot. It introduces some new characters, and it has like a fun spin on the character that we all know and love and appreciate. And yeah, so Solo. I wish that they did more of these standalone movies. I know that they were going to, but then they kind of put that on like a hiatus. But it was fun, and I think that they totally should. Like a standalone Obi-Wan movie would be a lot of fun, I think. So next up is Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And that really leads right into the original trilogy, which I'm excited to get back to that trilogy just to kind of like watch that and appreciate that, having all of this kind of like knowledge. So, okay, off to Rogue One, right?
Yeah.
Yay! Alright, so we are officially halfway done with our Star Wars movie marathon. This is the 5th movie that we need to watch, and we have 5 more to watch. This was Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And this pretty much leads directly into the events of Episode 4, A New Hope. But what did you think about this one?
So this one we've actually seen the first 10 minutes of this movie probably like 7 different times, just because we kept falling asleep. Not for like the movie reason, we just kept picking awful times to start watching it.
It's always like playing in like the break room at our respective jobs and stuff, and we always start it really late. We could never like commit to finishing it, so.
But this is the second full time that I've watched it all the way through, and I'm still going to continue with the fact that watching it in this order, the storyline is making more sense to me I guess it's like easier for me to follow along this way, and I was more invested in watching Rogue One this time around than the last time we watched it all the way through.
Yeah, I'd say so, because it took a while to kind of like get into it, because it sets up different characters, and it sets up different settings and whatnot, so it's a little bit more, it's harder to kind of commit to when you know that these characters aren't gonna be in it for the long haul, you know, that it's just kind of a standalone movie, kind of like Solo too, where it introduced some new characters where you knew that you weren't going to see them again.
Well, it's cool knowing that, like, now that I've seen, I guess, spoiler alert, I don't know, that now that I've seen Leia at the end of this movie, like, following it up with her at the beginning of the next movie is, like, it's more of just, like, one cohesive story to me now, instead of, like,
Leia and
how we watched
Tarkin, those characters, that they brought them back for this movie using computer-generated effects. That was really cool, and it's just, it's cool. Like, the end of this movie is the beginning of A New Hope, and just kind of seeing these events go straight into those, I'm really excited to kind of see, like, that momentum, if they set it up in a way where it just feels like this kind of continuous energy, because this movie ends way up here in terms of the action and what's at stake and whatnot. So it's gonna be interesting now to watch the original Star Wars trilogy, and that's our next movie, is Episode 4, A New Hope. So we've made it through the prequels, we made it through the Star Wars story standalone movies. Now we have the original trilogy and then the new trilogy, and we will have watched all the Star Wars movies in anticipation of going to Galaxy's Edge. But yay, on to Episode 4, right?
Yay!
Okay, so we just watched Star Wars, the original Star Wars, Episode 4, A New Hope, and that was really cool. So originally we were gonna watch this one first, because I think, like I said at the beginning of this video, there's a lot of conversation and debate about the specific order of the movies in which you should watch them, because this is the original Star Wars story, and everything that came before this, everything that came after it, is kind of predicated on this story. So to watch the other ones first would have been a little bit weird, but we wanted to watch it chronologically because we wanted to experience the entirety of the Star Wars story, if that makes sense. And comparing them to the other movies, because all the ones that we've seen so far have been more recent adaptations of the story. This is now 45 years old, almost. And that's just really neat, you know? And comparatively to the other stories, you know, the effects, the editing, all of that wasn't comparatively as glamorous, obviously, because it's such an old movie. You know, the lightsaber battles were very, very modest in this movie, just kind of a little bit of like fencing more than actual flips and jumps and spins, and you know, it was more fun in I guess the prequels comparatively to the original movies. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts?
I just appreciated the movie for it being the original movie. Like, we saw all these like very well edited movies leading up to now this one, which is the original one, which I just appreciate it for being the original. And I appreciate, like, watching this one makes me appreciate all of the plot holes or whatever that they just continued to fill before, and how they like researched this movie to make it work there. So I'm having fun watching these to like connect all the old dots that they made after these movies.
There were still some inconsistencies that I think, and there were some things that they kind of retrofit in other movies that didn't exactly match up with how they set it up in this movie. Like, it seemed, I don't know for sure, but it seemed like this movie was made as a standalone movie, and then they kind of continued on with it as a trilogy, and then from there it was like, well, let's set up the original story that led into this, and then they kind of did that, and then now they've been putting kind of movies in between all of the stories that they've kind of made. So that's going to be the most interesting thing coming out of the end of all of this, is just how much the entire universe actually, how linear it is, I guess, because everything was made so out of order. And it's still an incredible story, and we've already been talking kind of a long time about this one. I have been talking a long time about this one. This is Luke's lightsaber, by the way. So next up we have Episode 5, right? Yeah. Which is The Empire Strikes Back, or Empire Strikes Back, which is a lot of people's favorite Star Wars movie. So on to that one. Okay, so we just watched Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, and it struck back big time, baby, because there was action. The lightsaber fights were much more improved in this one comparatively to Episode 4. The stakes were just a lot higher, and you can kind of see the storyline being set up a lot more as far as this trilogy goes. What did you think?
I understand why this was like one of the most popular ones out of all the Star Wars movies, because
I think it is, yeah.
This is where a lot of like the plot points are like discovered or like uncovered, whatever. So you establish the Leia and Han relationship, you establish the Luke and Vader relationship, and he loses his hand, he meets Yoda, he like all of this stuff is happening in this movie. So this is like the Star Wars movie, I would say.
Yeah, like for sure. It's I mean, I can't fathom what it was like to have that kind of big reveal moment, the I am your father moment, because that's one of the most well-known cinematic moments in history. And
the most misspoken line.
Yeah, it is. It was interesting to watch a lot of this is based on how we've watched these in chronological order, because the Yoda in this movie is a little bit different than the prequel
Very campy
version. Yeah, he's goofy, he's wacky, you know, and the training sequence is a little bit interesting because it's just a lot of like handstands and flips through the swamp, you know, which doesn't exactly correlate with the training that they went through in the prequels, but it was still a really, really fun movie, for sure. And then, like you said, kind of like setting up those relationships and just how it's going to wrap up in Episode 6, which is the Return of the Jedi. It's gonna be cool, and just to kind of see this all like come to a head as far as this saga of the Skywalker story. It's cool, and so I'm excited. So our next movie is going to be, like I said, Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. We did it! We just watched Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, which all up in my face.
That's what you get for all the times that you talk like this.
I'm sorry. So that's it, I guess. That's the conclusion to the original Star Wars trilogy. And I think it's pretty interesting because I think that Episode 4, A New Hope, could have been a standalone movie by itself, but then Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, and then Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, kind of expounded on that story a little bit, which was then, I guess, elaborated on even more with the prequels, the standalone movies. And again, watching this in chronological order has been really pleasant to just see that story from the beginning to where it is now.
That's what I'm the most excited about.
Yeah.
Just because like we've seen all of the movies, like the new movies included, but I haven't seen out from where it goes from the original trilogy into the new trilogy. So I'm excited to see the jump now from those movies.
Exactly, and we have 2 more to go now. So we watched 8 movies, and we have the last 2 for the new trilogy that's been coming out recently, which that's kind of neat because Emperor Palpatine in this, who you assume dies in Return of the Jedi, he's coming back for The Rise of Skywalker, which is going to be Episode 9, coming out later on this year. So I guess that just kind of extends the Skywalker saga even more. So this entire Star Wars, I guess the entire story is all about the Skywalkers. So it's going to be cool to see how Rey fits into that, and how that new story, like once that final movie comes out, just the bow that gets put on the entire Star Wars experience. It's going to be really, I'm hoping it's going to be worth it. I hope it's going to be really, really fun to kind of watch that. But as far as this one goes, it was cool. The settings were pretty interesting here. There was Endor in this movie. Empire Strikes Back had Hoth, and then A New Hope had Tatooine. So all of these different settings were really cool, very, very Star Wars settings. So, all right, so now we're moving on to the final. I know I talk a lot, but it's just exciting to kind of see all the story up until now. But now on to Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Yay! And we did it. We just watched episode 7, The Force Awakens, which is the first episode in the new trilogy, the new saga, that is still, I think, technically the Star Wars saga, I guess. And it was... I feel like we always start out just saying, and it was fun, and it was cool. But it was.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because this one is kind of like a mirror, like an almost like... It's very similar to A New Hope, and I know that was like a lot of people's complaints when the movie came out, just the similarities and how it was that similar to A New Hope. And I didn't mind that. It was almost like a remake of A New Hope in a lot of different aspects, but with today's technology and today's narrative and effects, which was really cool to get to see. There was definitely some new aspects of the story, which I know we're gonna come around in the long kind of arc that is going to be this trilogy, without a doubt. But we got to see some new characters, Kylo Ren and Rey, Finn, Poe Dameron, just all those new characters, as well as the returning ones like Han Solo and Leia and Luke Skywalker. Technically, not really in this one as much, but
but he still got paid a lot, I'm sure.
Probably good old Mark Hamill. What were your thoughts?
Well, kind of going off of what you said, I think like even though it might be similar to other movies, this is the third generation, if you want to look at it that way. So like you had the prequels, which was one generation, and then the original, which is the original generation, and now we have the next generation, and it's all about their stories and everything. And these are the movies that I want to get behind, because now this is the story that we're currently in. So I'm gonna be like the most invested in these ones, paying attention the most to these ones, because like when that third one hits, I'm ready.
Yeah, so I was most nervous about just getting to these movies before we get to go to Galaxy's Edge, because that's pretty much what the land is based off of. There's a lot of references to, I guess, the originals, obviously, and then the prequels, but the land is mostly about the Resistance and the First Order, which is the movies that we're on right now for relevancy. So it would have been a little bit embarrassing if we went to Galaxy's Edge without really rewatching these and experiencing these, because there's going to be a lot more reference to about these movies than the original trilogy and the prequels. So we did it. Yay. Somebody called me in the middle of that while we were talking, but we did it. So now our next one is going to be...
you were going to give me a weird high five.
High five. Now our next one is going to be episode 8, The Last Jedi, and that's the final one that we have to watch before we go to Galaxy's Edge, and then before The Rise of Skywalker, and that comes into theaters, I think, at the end of this year. So one more movie. Yay.
You got this.
So clearly, I can't even see you. So clearly, I think what we learned most from this is that I don't have as many lightsabers as I should. I think I need some more lightsabers. Stop. I don't even know which one you turned on. So, we just watched The Last Jedi, Star Wars Episode 8.
Just drop them all.
Okay. Yeah, so that was it. We finished our Star Wars movie marathon. That was the last one that we needed to watch, Star Wars Episode 8. So, you watched this from the beginning, I'm presuming, but we watched the original prequel trilogy, we watched Solo, we watched Rogue One into the original Star Wars trilogy, and then now Episode 7 and Episode 8. And this one in particular, it was interesting. I know a lot of people are very, very divisive on The Last Jedi and kind of what it did to the characters. A lot of people think it kind of mutilated the narrative and a lot of the characters that we know and we love. And I could have been okay with a different direction that they took a lot of the character development, but I'm also aware that this is the halfway point in this trilogy and that there's still another movie to wrap up the saga completely. So I'd like to assume what they did in this movie was very very intensive, and yeah, so they did it on purpose, and I'm excited to see where the story goes and then where the story concludes later on this year with The Rise of Skywalker coming out into theaters. But what was your opinion on this movie and the entire experience altogether?
Experience altogether, I'm glad we did it because I feel more caught up on the whole Star Wars story. The Last Jedi I liked, just because it's the most recent movie and it's the most fresh movie out of the storyline.
Solo is technically,
okay. out of this storyline that we're watching right now.
Okay.
And so I'm excited to continue. I'm ready for the new movie to come out and see where the storyline takes us. They're fun. I like the new ones.
Yeah. I'm excited to now having this information and this experience. We can now go experience Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which is why we're wearing our Star Wars shirts. We are heading out of the door right now to head over to Hollywood Studios to check out Batuu, the planet of Batuu, the Black Spire Outpost, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Walt Disney World. And I am so excited about it. I'm really glad that we got to these last couple movies because that's really going to be the main narrative of the land that we're going to be experiencing today. But still don't really know what to expect other than it's going to be pretty cool. A lot of thematic elements and foods and things to buy and then experiences. The Smuggler's Run attraction. I'm so excited, and we got this done like kind of at the last second because we actually have to leave right now to head over to Hollywood Studios. But thank you for watching this with me, Brennan.
Oh god.
You can do it. Yay.
Oh my gosh.
And thank you guys for hanging out with us this entire time and experiencing us kind of rambling through the Star Wars movies that you may not have the same opinions on, or you may share the same opinions on, but otherwise, it was a lot of fun. So I'll see you later, and may the Force be with you.
And you.
And me?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Bye.